We are pleased tonight to have you with us as we are going to honor the life of Dr. Martin Luther King on this day. Dr. King, he entered the national scene in 1955, a year after Brown versus Board of Education, as a leader of the Montgomery Improvement Association. Brown said that segregation was illegal, yet Rosa Parks was still arrested for refusing to give up her seat to a white man. King organized a bus boycott that would last for 13 months. During that time, Dr. King will be shot at, arrested, his home is bombed, and he will be attacked from basically every corner of the nation. And yet Dr. King persevered. One of the hardest things about teaching in American history, I teach early American classes, is dealing with the contradiction of establishing a nation based on the principles that all men are created equal, yet at the same time, the enforcement of millions of people because of the color of their skin. Tonight, Dr. Anderson and Dr. Weber will help us better understand one small aspect of this peculiar institution of slavery. It's going to deal with the subject of the spiritual. This is a subject that has interested me. For the spiritual is, for one of America's first forms of music. It's one of the first things that's different from the kind of music that Americans were listening to and bringing over from Europe. But even more importantly is what the spiritual meant to the slaves. Frederick Douglass once said that slaves sing the most when they are the most unhappy. But it was much more than that. Slaves sang songs about freedom, songs about joy, songs about sorrow. A song could help them in their grief by singing of, a time of greater joy or of a better life, even if that better life was the next life. Tonight, Dr. Anderson is going to talk about possibly the most famous spiritual, Deep River, and how freedom did not always mean death, and the importance of that song to the Americans today. Dr. Anderson has a long history with USAO. She started here as a student before transferring to Northern Illinois. And for years, she was a lecturer here at USAO and recently has joined the history faculty at USAO, and I, for one, am very grateful to have her. She comes to us from her PhD from Yale University and has worked on many projects, including some dealing with the Smithsonian. So please help me welcome Dr. Anderson.
Good evening, everyone. As Dr. Fink indicated, I want to talk to you briefly about a very, very influential song, Deep River. Through all the sorrow of the sorrow songs, there breathes a hope, a faith in the ultimate justice of things. The minor cadences of despair change often to triumph and calm confidence. Sometimes it is a faith in life, sometimes faith in death, sometimes assurance of boundless justice in some fair world beyond. But whichever it is, the meaning is always clear, that sometime, somewhere, men will judge men by their souls and not by their skins. This was said by W.E.B. Du Bois, Souls of Black Folk. This hope and faith in ultimate justice of things existed with the slaves of the American South and became articulated through a body of American sacred songs commonly referred to as Negro spirituals, or to use W.B. Du Bois's phrase, sorrow songs. Sorrow songs constitute one of the largest and most significant forms of American folk song. These songs began to proliferate in the American South during the end of the 18th century, and in many ways correspond to a push from the Society of the Propagation of the Gospel to Christianize slaves and to teach them the Bible. While the tunes and rhythms of most of these songs are ancient and derived from African ethnic groups brought to North America during the transatlantic slave trade, the lyrics of these songs are taken from the Bible, with special emphasis placed upon stories from the Old Testament. Exodus, Deuteronomy, and the book of Joshua serves as sources for these songs. Black slaves self-identified with the experience of the Israelites who suffered under the slavery in Egypt, their quest to escape the tyranny of bondage under the Egyptians, and lastly, their hope and faith in God's promise to lead them to the promised land of Canaan that existed across the Jordan River. The song provided blacks with a vehicle to express their despair, their longing for self-possession, for freedom through the safety of Christian symbols. In his autobiography, My Bondage, My Freedom, Frederick Douglass writes about the slaves' appropriation of biblical symbolism to express the taboo subject of freedom. A keen observer, he indicates, might have detected that our repeated singing of O Canaan, sweet Canaan, I am bound for the land of Canaan, something more than a hope of reaching heaven. We meant to reach the north, and the north was our Canaan. The song Deep River is part of this rich body of American sacred songs. Deep River, my home is over Jordan. Deep River, Lord, I want to cross over into campground. Deep River, my home is over Jordan. Deep River, Lord, I want to cross over into campground. Oh, don't you want to go to the gospel feast, that promised land where all is peace? Oh, Deep River, Lord, I want to cross over into campground. According to some scholars, the words Deep River and Jordan symbolize the Ohio River, which existed as the nation's only physical boundary that separated free states from slave states. In arguably the three most significant novels on American slavery, Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, Mark Twain's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, and Toni Morrison's Beloved, the Ohio River is presented as the preeminent escape route for fugitive slaves, which creates a symbolic connection between the biblical Jordan River and the Ohio River, between the promised land of Canaan and the free soil of the north. Whether or not this particular song was used as a secret code for assisting slaves to freedom on the Underground Railroad, like Go Down Moses, I Got My Ticket, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, is up for debate. One thing is for certain. Deep River not only communicates a desire to travel from one place to another, but it also communicates a desire to find community. In the Bantu language of Kimbundu, the word campground or Quilombo translates into free community. Interestingly, Deep River is one of the best-known spirituals in mainstream America. It has been sung in various films ranging from Harry A. Pollard's 1929 film adaptation of Showboat to the 1983 blockbuster National Lampoon's Vacation. It has been recorded by such notables as Paul Robeson, Marian Anderson, Odetta, and Kathleen Battle. Deep River existed largely within the segregated confines of Black life. It wasn't until 1877 publication of J.B.T. Marsh's The Story of the Fisk Jubilee Singers and Their Songs that Deep River first appears in print. The original Jubilee Singers of Fisk University were formed in 1871 with the purpose of raising money to keep the university from having to close. And they were instrumental in preserving and introducing Negro spirituals to audiences across the United States and Europe. They developed such notoriety that they were even asked to perform for President Grant and Queen Victoria. One man who was profoundly touched by the Fisk Jubilee Singers was a Black British composer and Pan-Africanist, Samuel Coleridge Taylor. He collected both African and African-American music. He credited the Fisk Jubilee Singers and their European tours with introducing him to Negro spirituals. Coleridge Taylor was the first person to give serious attention to Deep River. The song was published in his 1905 collection, 24 Negro Melodies Transcribed for the Piano. For him, Deep River was the most beautiful, the most poignant of the selections. His composition transformed the Fifth Jubilee singers' arrangements of Deep River, which eliminated the chanting tone melody that contained the call and response aspect exhibited by most Negro spirituals, and replaced it with deep rolling chords that create a dreamy romanticism, a sense of timeless reverence that captures both the profound longing for and the confidence in the belief that all things ultimately work towards justice. For your listening pleasure, Dr. Steve Weber will perform Samuel Coleridge Taylor's wonderful arrangement, Deep River.